I think we should get started now that everyone can hear me. So, hi everyone, thanks for joining us for the next webinar in our Incubeta Ignite virtual learning series. This is Marketing in Times of Crisis. My name is Amy Jackson. I'm Business Director at Incubeta, and I will be moderating the session today now that you can all hear me correctly. So before we begin, just have a few housekeeping points to go through. Our session today is an hour long. We're starting with a discussion followed by a presentation. Please feel free to leave any comments or questions in the chat on the right hand side, and we'll answer them following each section as we go through. We're also recording today's session, and we will share this shortly after the session is finished. So please let me introduce you to our wonderful speakers today. So David is indeed back by popular demand following the Retail Shakedown in February. And to give you a very brief overview of who David is, he joins us from HSBC, where he has over 10 years experience and is currently part of HSBC's retail and leisure team. So the insight into the financial element of retail is truly valuable. So thanks for joining us again, David. And we're also joined by Max, who is our Innovation Director and has been at NPI for over 6 years, heading up our performance marketing team. Very well versed to talk about how businesses can mitigate risk at this particular moment in time. And Max actually covers all areas of digital marketing, including multi-channel media buying to creative and feed development. And you'll be hearing him talk later with his weird British American accent. So without further ado, let me introduce our first guest, David. David, are you there?
Hopefully I'm here.
There you are. Let me just... Brilliant. Okay, great. So, David, last time we spoke was at the Retail Shakedown in February, and at that point, you were spending a lot of your time actually looking at the potential impact on COVID-19. And I remember we discussed the impact on the supply chain in China specifically. And at that point, we had already seen some luxury players unfortunately suffering as consumer demand was down due to that. Now, this is impacting so much more than just the supply chain. Do you mind giving us a quick overview on how the situation has evolved since then?
Yeah, no, definitely. So when we did the Retail Shakedown early to middle of February, this was just a supply chain issue for the UK. This was just a retail back end. The consumer didn't see an issue at the time, but for HSBC, we were starting to see an impact with our customers trying to get orders in. And to be honest, it wasn't going to impact spring, summer. It was more going to impact autumn, winter ranges. But then it evolved, and it's turned into not just a China issue. It's turned into a global issue. It's spread. And then probably 3-4 weeks ago, we started to see impacts on the retailer side, where consumer demand either picked up tremendously as people started to panic buy, or consumer demand dropped off a cliff. And then obviously the last 2-3 weeks when everything was closed down, that's where we've seen a massive polarization between some of the, I wouldn't say winners and losers, I'd say survivors and losers. And that's where much 150% of my time is spent at the minute, looking at all these businesses. And there's not many businesses at the minute that don't need extra liquidity, extra cash, because most of them haven't got any money coming in, and the ones that have, it's only maybe the online revenue stream, which sometimes at best was 30% of their revenue for a multi-channel retailer, or if you're 100% online, hopefully you're only down negative 20-30% from where you were. So online isn't a bullet message. I think it helps having an online channel, being 100% online, but it's still going to be tough over the next 2-3 months.
And just conscious that sort of like we're going to be talking about retail, but obviously, you know, this goes without saying across all verticals, across all industries, and the impact here is huge. Just focusing on UK or global retail at the moment, and specifically looking at offline. a lot of questions that I get asked, which hopefully you'll be able to sort of shed some more light on, is do you think that brick and mortar are going to be able to bounce back from this?
In short, yes, but it's quite a complex answer and situation, because the strongest retailers arguably have got a better balance sheet, they're in a better position to rebound. And what the government's done, and we'll go into this in a bit more detail later, but the schemes that the government's put in place, like the furlough scheme, the coronavirus interruption loan scheme, the deferred VAT, the business rate holiday, all of these things have got rid of costs for retailers, but there's still cash needed on a week by week basis to pay. Well, I'd say rent, but a lot of them haven't paid rent for this quarter, with service bills, utility bills, etc. There's still a cash leakage. So ones with strong balance sheets are arguably going to be coming out of this relatively well. But my personal opinion is this is going to accelerate the demise of some of the weaker operators. And I'll not go into names, but ones that were already struggling prior to March 1st. This will probably be the nail in the coffin, because the last 2-3 years it's been an unparalleled challenge for the retail industry, just through cyclical changes and then structural changes from online to offline. And those who are struggling will probably, as we've seen with Debenhams going to go into administration, Cath Kidston as well, who are looking to restructure the business. We're going to see more of that over the next coming weeks and months, as literally cash is leaking out of the business and they become insolvent. So there is a future for retail, physical retail, definitely. People are visual, experiential people. We want to get out there. Once all this is finished, once we can get out, we want to go into a shop. We probably want to go into a shop more than we ever have. I'm an online guy. I love shopping online. But after all this, I dare say I'll be going into shops and speaking to customer service representatives far more than I ever have. So I do believe there is a future for physical retail, but it will take time. It's not going to be 2-3 months, and when this opens up again, it'll be back to where it was. It's a case of 2-3 months. They'll open, they'll gradually start to see income rise back up again, but it could be minus 70%, 80%, minus 50%. And then this time next year, hopefully, they might be back onto where budget should be. Hopefully, that's what we're projecting.
Great, thanks, David. And I also, don't like to sort of use the term winners and losers in this situation, but I guess one of the winners at the moment, if we are to use that term, is sort of grocery, and those essential items that sort of people need on the day to day. What are your general views on the rise in this sector? Yes,
food retail normally it's probably the most unsexiest part of retail you can get. It's a flat market. People need to eat, and it's all about market share. It's all about what's going to Sainsbury's, being taken away from Tesco, going to Aldi, going to Lidl. It's just quite a boring market for me personally. But as the Nielsen market data came out last week, there was a 20% increase in influx of demand in March. Which is obviously people stocking up, people panic buying, despite the government saying don't panic buy. But yeah, that's the biggest thing that's ever been recorded from a month-on-month increase. And to be honest, is that a 1 month trend? We think that'll probably happen for another couple of months at least, not 20%, but probably double-digit growth. And you say, oh, why, David? Why is that going to happen? People have stopped panic buying. People have started to be sensible. Well, we have to remember that we're no longer going out for lunch. We're no longer going out for dinner. We're no longer able to get maybe as many takeaways as we did previously. So you've got that whole element, say 20% of the food sales pie, which used to go to the commercial side, wholesale side of it, is being diverted back in to supermarkets. So people are now buying extra because they're having that extra meal at home. So we are seeing that. One thing I did want to mention as well, and Helen Dickinson, so she's head of the BRC, and she's well known to us. She did a talk with the government, one of those press briefings, probably about 2 weeks ago, And it stuck with me because she explained the situation as to why there was empty shelves. People were saying, well, people are panic buying, people are worrying, there's empty shelves, why can't the supermarkets cope? Well, they literally had maybe a week, 2 weeks at best to get supply in an order. Okay, when you think about Christmas, okay, Christmas, you know it's going to happen every year, and retailers plan 12 months in advance, ensuring they have the right number of turkeys, right number of stuffing, all that stuff, so they don't run out. So the supply chain, there is capacity there, it's just getting back up to speed again. And that's how she explained. She said, retailers just haven't had the time to plan. Now they're getting back up to speed. We should see less empty shelves. Don't panic buy is the key message. There is going to be enough food to go around to everybody.
Yeah, and I do think that has been definitely more transparent over the past few weeks as well. You know, I mean, we're all living this as well, not just as marketers, but as consumers. So I think that those trends which are coming through, which you're mentioning, are very sort of apparent in our day-to-day lives as well. Flipping that, the non-essential retail side of things, your likes of luxury apparel. I mean, I know from my experience, I've been quite shocked at how much people are still shopping for the non-essential items. I think it goes down back to psychology. I think it goes back to the fact that people are at home and they haven't really got that much to do. You could argue there's a little bit of extra cash available for those who aren't commuting. But what do you think is going to happen to this element of non-essential retail? Do you think it's going to keep on the increase?
Well, Amy, I think you've answered my question there.
Sorry.
So our perspective. So the people who drive the consumer demand is generally the middle class and upper class who have larger disposable incomes. And you think probably everybody on this call and everybody on this WebEx at the minute is still working, generally still working. So they're still getting the same wage, okay? And they've had the same wage for the past month whilst all this has been going on. But subtracting the fact that you're not commuting, like you said, subtracting the fact that you're not buying that lunch, you're not buying that coffee, you're not going out for drinks after work, you're not going out for dinner, you're not planning that holiday, you've arguably, and not to mention if you've got a mortgage, that's being reduced as well thanks to the Bank of England. You probably never had so much cash. And I know that's bizarre to say that, given everything that's going on, but your disposable income's probably never been what it's been. And yes, I understand that uncertainty is a big issue. Everything's, am I going to get furloughed? Is the economy going to crash in the next 2-3 months if this doesn't survive, if we don't get out of this? Well, my argument back would be the government has done everything it can to ensure the whole population and UK corporate is in no worse or marginally worse position as they were pre-virus as they will be post-virus. The whole idea is to put the economy and businesses and the consumer in a hibernation for the next 2-3 months so we can come out of this absolutely booming. And that's genuinely what I believe, what I want to see happen. So going back to non-food discretionary online, do we see a place for that at the minute? Definitely. There is winners and losers within that though, because you look at high street fashion, you look at fast fashion, is there any need to buy those out clothes? There is absolutely zero need. Some people might buy it, but highly unlikely. You look at, say, hobbies and pastimes, retailers that sell, say, kitchen equipment, bread makers, like a Lakeland, for example. Go on Lakeland's website, okay, you'll see it's currently closed, okay? That's not because it's not doing well. That's just because demand has surpassed what they're able to supply. And the same goes for the likes of, I don't know, gear for music, okay? You look at people wanting to buy musical instruments, and I know we talked about it earlier, Amy, I bought myself a ukulele. I wanted to learn how to play the ukulele over the next 3 months, and I'm not the only one. There's been tens of thousands of people globally who are literally stuck in an office like this who want to try and make the best out of a bad situation. And some of the other better operators, even in the luxury premium space, and this is counterintuitive, but they're still doing relatively well, and people are still buying. And we're starting to see a little bit of rebound in China. I think that is helping on the luxury side as well, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point there that businesses are still doing well. It's the back end, it's warehouses, it's the staff, it's the manpower behind it that unfortunately has to be put on hold due to the safety and sort of due to complying with the regulations from the government. So that is something that we're definitely seeing across the board as well. Demand is still very much there.
I'll just add to that, Amy. Sorry, when you're talking about the DCs and the warehousing side of things, like I know Next, River Island, TK Maxx, and Net-a-Porter, they all closed their online operations, and they cited health and safety reasons. And I think some of that is true. Yes, some of the unions might have said that they're not happy working in non-essential roles. But there is an element of commercial viability as well. Was it viable for the likes of Next to continue operating such a large operation when people aren't buying those items of furniture, that middle of the range clothing and apparel? Probably not. So we see, as long as the operators, non-food operators, operating in accordance to the government guidelines safely, then there is a need to have that still operating. I look at Sports Direct, and I know Mike Ashley got a whole lot of crap for doing and saying what he said and trying to keep the stores open. But then he offered his logistics, his infrastructure to the NHS. And that's something that other retailers have got. They've got the infrastructure, they've got the warehousing. Okay, they can help the nation out. And I think the government, and we've seen and spoken to the government, we can see there is going to be an element of rationale to keep these guys open just in case. And people arguably need something to do. Like, we're not going to sit in the house and behave if we're literally got nothing to do. So the nation needs something and wants to buy things, and we're still seeing that.
Yeah, definitely. And just going back to sort of what everybody's doing whilst they're at home, I'm expecting a ukulele lesson later on at the end of this. I think everybody is. Yeah. So we've sort of just touched on trends a little bit there, and obviously trends in spending online on apparel, non-essential items. I've just bought 2 deck chairs. I haven't got a garden, but the drive is still good. What type of trends are we sort of seeing in spending online, like across athleisure wear, gym wear, electronics, which you touched upon as well?
Yeah, no, definitely. So up until the social distancing lockdown, like we saw multiple retailers come out and saw a surge in demand, like the likes of PC World. They had a 35% surge in consumer electronics, which was really people like me back to get the whole office set up. But there was a surge in that kind of demand. Same with hardware. People like Screwfix and those guys had a surge. People wanting to take DIY projects on. And then, whilst the lockdown's been on, that's pivoted, and you alluded to like athleisure, like the health and fitness side of things has really picked off. Like, you probably, when you went out for a walk, you probably never seen so many people out for a walk with a family, and the same with say like bicycles. You probably never seen so many families out on the bikes. Like, those are products which are still continuing to do well. You look at like weights like dumbbells, etc. Go on to Sports Direct and see if you can buy them. Okay, I can guarantee there's either only one option available, or it's completely sold out. Like, that's the kind of demand that we're seeing. And then also you look at baking goods. Like, you wouldn't think that baking goods would be 1,000% hit, but people are either making bread, making products for themselves, or they've got kids. And that's one of the activities that they can keep them busy with. So we see like John Lewis and these guys, and Lakeland, like I said before, all picking up in demand on that side of things. And then the gym wear as well, athwear, like you mentioned. Like JD Sports updated the market a week on Tuesday, saying they'd seen a big demand on that. I think other sports retailers like Foot Asylum and Nike and Adidas have also seen upticks as well. So people are still buying, people are still going for that non-essential stuff.
And just looking at, comparing that to China, and how there's been massive increase in consumer spend in China, thinking about the athleisure, it's just reminding me that Lululemon has started to open stores back up again in China. They're huge over there. How do you think the UK retail is going to come back in comparison to what we're seeing in China?
Yeah, so China is a good read, but to be honest, we're not trying to look too much into it and draw parallels, just because of it's a different demographic, different political, economical situation over there. Like, at the end of the day, when the Chinese government says lockdown, you lock down. You're not going out for a walk or sunbathing, you generally lock down. So their 2-month hibernation period was 2 months exact. So I think we are probably on a longer trajectory. I think I saw a good report from, it was from Deutsche Bank, not HSBC, but I read their report, and it was a really interesting report of the different scenarios that were going to come out. And I think they were typically looking at the median opening of the consumer markets around about the middle of June. So I think so 3 months, that would be 3-month closure period. I think that would be a good read across. In China, though, like you said, Lululemon's opened their stores, Nike's got all their stores open, Marriott, all their hotels are open now. Like that, they're starting to return to not. I'm not going to say normal. It's not normal, because they've still got social distancing in place, and there is still travel restrictions in certain areas. It's not normal, but compared to what it was, it's starting to open back up again. And then the news of Italy and Spain yesterday, the death rates falling, the markets took that really positively. So I think there is far more positive news out there at the minute. And I think, hopefully, optimistically, we won't be stuck in this situation for longer than we need to be. In June, July, maybe we'll start to come out of this. But looking at China specifically, yes, they're starting to come out of it. Hopefully we can follow suit. But maybe
Great. Thanks, David. And just conscious of time, there's 2 more questions that I really want to ask you. So moving away from consumer behaviour, what impact are we seeing on businesses behind closed doors? Because it's not all as great as saying, yes, we think that consumer demand is still there, people are still shopping, etc., etc. This is, it's a serious issue. It's businesses are being impacted in so many different ways. But what are you sort of seeing behind closed doors and behind the fact that people are still very much shopping?
Yeah, so what I'm seeing behind closed doors and not in the public arena is quite frightening. I can probably, every single retailer, almost every single retailer, needs help. So the government's put all their strategies in place, which I said earlier, and all the different measures to relieve pain across, like the furlough scheme. So that's one of your biggest cost bases, business rate. That's a third of your property costs, and then deferring rent, etc. Like that's helping out, but they're still leaking cash. So almost everybody I can see needs to try and preserve cash. It's all about preservation of cash at the minute. So whether that's not paying suppliers, so when I say suppliers, that means a lot of different things. That means paying the bank on finance that they've got. That means paying your landlord. That means paying the manufacturer. That means paying your utility bills. There's lots of different suppliers that need to be paid. So the first thing that we see happen is they'll go from 30 days payable to 60 days. And then if they work with the supplier, sometimes they'll go to 120 days or even 150 days. They'll try and stretch that out so they can preserve cash. A lot of them will get cash injections, so whether that's through the corporate coronavirus corporate finance facility, the CCFF, which is commercial paper, which is bought by the Bank of England. I know Next just took that up, and I know there's a few other retailers taking that up. Or whether it's through the C-bill scheme, which the banks can help out. Like, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to alleviate some of that pressure with additional finance. And I know it's not great because we're giving companies more debt, okay? Companies that have debt don't need more debt, but the government is willing to pay the first 12 months of interest. There's no fees attached to it. So it's going to help with a little bit of wiggle room for the next 12 months, okay, to get out of this situation. And that's what I'm seeing behind closed doors. And that's every minute of every day for the past 2 weeks has been back to back to back calls trying to help businesses navigate this ever-changing situation. Because up until maybe the beginning of last week, people thought, oh crap, our online operation is going to close as well because of Next and because of River Island, etc. But we were speaking to a set of accountants who, some are similar to me in the retail and leisure space, but has a global role. And he said they did a bit of research around the world, and no country had enforced an online non-food closure, which is a good sign. Basically, they've kept them open despite it being non-essential. There hasn't been a country that they'd seen that had closed it. So I think that is a little bit of positivity to take away, that they've still got a little bit of revenue coming in to help pay for the costs coming up. But it's all about looking after at the minute and trying to get as much funding as possible to help weather the next 3 months, and then hopefully things will start to pick up again.
Right, and I think you've just sort of answered a few of the bits the question I was going to ask about what the government's doing to help and what the bank's doing to help. But is there anything else that you sort of wanted to touch on the back of that point?
Probably not for the people on this call, but anybody who's speaking to anybody in the finance department of where they work, I think they'll already be engaged with banks and shareholders, trying to make sure that there is options out there. And as long as I've been in banking, which is just over a decade, and it was through the financial crisis, I've never seen the government act with as many measures and the depth of measures that they have. And as a bank as well, the onus being put on us to help customers, help companies, help people navigate this crisis. So with everybody working together, I really, really hope that we're going to come out of this and we're going to bounce out of this in 3 months' time. Although I was going to mention there's a lot of different theories out there of how we're going to come out of this recovery, and I'll educate some of the people on the call. But people say we might get a V-shaped recovery, so straight up, down, back out again. Some people are saying U-shaped recovery, so down, along, and then back up again, or a W-shape. And that's something I've seen some retailers plan to double dip, so up, down. So 12-month closure now, and then if it rebounds again, if the virus picks up again, that's something that might happen, but hopefully remote. But the common consensus is it's going to be a hockey stick recovery or an L shape, so slowly down and back up again. So I think that's where we think the recovery is going to come. So it's not going to be quick, but it will happen. I guarantee it will happen. But unfortunately, there might be fewer retailers out there when it does.
Hey, thanks, David. I think we're out of time. A lot of the questions that I've got coming through are basically looking towards the future. I know that you've just mentioned about what we're going to be expecting imminently, but could you just give us, I think I've only just got time to answer one question anyway, but yeah. Retail as we know it now in this current situation, how is that going to compare to 12 months' time?
I do think people are going to be shopping more online. So at the minute, the UK non-food retail is about 30% online. I think that will accelerate that increase. I don't think it's going to go beyond 40%. I think it'll stay between 35 and 40%. But I think it will accelerate that change, the structural change. So physical retailers need to get that on board. And the one good thing, or one of several good things to come out of this, it's accelerate innovation in companies. Different things that you see retailers do, you see the leisure industry do, teaming up together to try and get everybody through the situation through different solutions. And China did a really good thing with that, which there's loads of articles out there which you can read on, but JD and Alibaba were at the forefront of this while they were going through their crisis.
Great. Thanks so much, David.
No problem.
I mean, we could talk about this for absolute hours, but yeah, it's been great. It's been great chatting, and we've got some loads of comments that have just come through, but I'll probably ping them over to you, and yeah, we can chat about them afterwards. I can try and get back to people. But thank you so much.
No problem, Amy. Thanks everybody, and I'll sign off.
Great. Okay, cool. So for those of you who are still with us, next session is over with Max. And just to give some context, I think a lot of questions that I'm being asked about the current situation, especially as consumer confidence is fluctuating and brands are sort of being watched with a really eagle eye, is how businesses should approach marketing at this point. And more importantly, how can you promote your business while still minimizing risk? If you haven't read it already, Max has a brilliant blog post on the 5 things businesses can be doing right now to improve efficiency, and he's going to take us through some of those tips now. So welcome, Max.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. Just before I jump into everything, I just want to just say I can definitely co-sign David's point about baking. I think my Instagram feed is about 95% banana bread at the minute. So it's definitely something I'm seeing reflected on my end. Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm sure a lot of you were just here for David, so I'm sure a lot of you are probably going to clear off now. But for those of you who do fancy sticking around, welcome to my portion of the webinar. So last week, my colleague Damien ran everyone through in a similar webinar what advertisers can be looking to do to build their brand for the future and start thinking about what to do as we come out of this crisis. To go alongside with that, I kind of want to focus on what marketers can be doing right now to ensure that, you know, what precious ad spend they do have is definitely driving the business forward in an efficient and incremental way. So let's jump straight in. So the questions I aim to answer with this in this webinar. So there's so much in the news at the minute, so many statistics being shared. How can we sort of wade through all that and find out what it really means for me and my business? A bit of an exploration of the key pain points that businesses are currently experiencing. And then finally, sort of what steps can we put in place to mitigate the risk of some of those pain points to ensure that marketing efforts are actually beneficial for the business. So first up, I mean, I'm sure most of you, just like me, in the first day, 2 days of the crisis hitting, were sort of desperately out there seeking any sort of statistics or analysis that we could find that would give us a bit of a steer on the market trends. And then fast forward about 3 weeks later, and you can't really move for avoiding these sort of stats, and with so much out there, every media business out there sort of putting forth their stats and analysis and opinions, ourselves very much included in that. It can be, really difficult to find out what's really going on. Everyone has the best intentions in putting these statistics forward, but what do they really mean for me and my business? Often they're done at a very top, economic level or industry level. And they don't necessarily understand the pain points of your business, because every vertical is different and every business within that will be experiencing different challenges. So I'm definitely not saying, let's not listen to any of these statistics. There's definitely some great ones around which will give you a bit of a steer on what you should be doing, but they shouldn't be the be all and end all for what you decide to do, and you should be changing your plans drastically based on that necessarily. If we take sort of this statistic, for example, this is one that's been bandied around quite a bit, which is 55% of marketers have postponed reviewing ad campaigns, or 60% are cutting or reviewing budgets. And those, 55 to 60%, those can be quite scary statistics. Those are big numbers. But what this is really saying is, 60% of advertisers are postponing, reviewing campaigns and reviewing budgets. And I don't know about you guys, but for the businesses that I work with, that sounds almost like a pretty normal Tuesday, to be honest. And frankly, I'd expect slightly more drastic stats, if England had got dumped out of the Euros this summer in the group stages. So by all means, definitely read all you can, understand all you can, but do try and put it in the context of the issues that you're currently facing. So just want to now jump into, what are those key factors that are affecting businesses, which again, David and Amy touched on quite a bit before. But the first one is demand. This is by far and away the biggest issue that any business is facing. I'm sure you've all read the multitude of articles about the plight of the travel industry. in the situation that they're facing currently. And you know, unfortunately, there is no real, you know, immediate magic fix to this solution, but we will look at sort of kind of the things that we are recommending to the businesses who can afford to do some elements of marketing in these situations. Again, David touched on this as well. Liquidity, you know, how cash rich a business is will play a significant role in how effectively they'll be able to navigate this period. You know, retailers everywhere are, you know, desperately trying to liquidate their stock to be able to pay off, you know, suppliers, pay off staff, other business costs. And we'll take a look at what some businesses are doing in that space. And then finally, sort of stock and distribution. So regulation has completely halted production for a lot of businesses. And obviously that is truly crippling. For others, you know, social distancing is just, you know, creating a lot of inefficiencies in their warehouses and their distribution centers. So again, we'll take a look at what can be done there. Won't be covering off what should be done to improve the efficiency of your warehouses and your distribution centers. That would be a completely different presentation, and one that I would be severely underqualified to give. So we'll focus on the marketing side for now. But before we jump into these three issues individually, I just want to, you know, touch on, you know, those few businesses. You know, we talked about winners and losers. You know, the few that, you know, do tend to be doing quite well, and, you know, demand is strong, and distribution isn't, say, necessarily much of an issue. You know, in like gaming, software, and, you know, industries similar to that, you know, they're really doing well. And I think the key for those businesses is to not feel guilty. You know, the world really does need these businesses, the economy, and employ staff, and hopefully, you know, employ more staff. You know, there was again a lot in the news in the first couple of days about, you know, the postal sector asking, you know, should we be delivering all these goods that are probably non-essential? And, you know, they're completely right. In the initial couple of days, while the postal sector sort of adjusts to the new norm, that was a big issue, and will continue to be an issue. But it's a challenge that we as an economy should be, you know, pretty pleased to have. You know, the fact that, you know, there is business still driving the country forward, and whatever country you're in forward, should be something that we're really pleased for, and innovation and increased jobs in that postal sector should be something we definitely welcome. And, you know, a lot of brands have come to me and said that, you know, they're worried about you know, the public backlash of them continuing to operate in this environment. And, you know, I can understand that there are definitely businesses who've maybe gone about this in the wrong way, but overall, you know, the public does understand the ongoing need for the private sector to be able to fund the public. And Kantar study recently found that, you know, only 8% of consumers think that brands should really stop advertising. I think the key is just to be honest and considerate with your approach, and do try and help out where you can. I think, again, David touched on the Sports Direct example, where they maybe started out on the wrong foot but readjusted to try and be as helpful as they can to really push things forward. So moving on to those primary issues. So I just want to talk about what you should be doing, or what can you be doing if you are facing those demand issues. And the only real answer here is what you can. You know, you understand your business issues better than anyone else. Again, using the travel example, there's a lot of content online trying to encourage brands to, you know, divert all resources to try and speak to all these people who are, you know, looking for cheap flights and cheap holidays for December. And, you know, every travel business should be trying to push to try and speak to those customers. But the reality is, you know, that might be the case. You know, bigger airlines might be able to afford to continue to do that, and you'll still see a few airlines bidding on the likes of flights to Sydney and flights to Japan, etc. But for, you know, more the smaller to medium-sized players, you know, that's just not really possible. You know, a lot of, in fact, all resources for a lot of brands that I speak to in that sector are sort of diverted entirely to, you know, battling with insurance companies to make sure that those people who have had their bookings cancelled, helping them get the refund that they need. But the few advertisers that we, you know, can afford to, you know, survive, you know, buckle down and hibernate, as David says, to be able to survive this. We've been trying to encourage them to try and do everything they can to build for the future. So looking at longer term projects that will increase their efficiency as we move out of this crisis. So looking into analytics projects, you know, making sure that the measurement solution is as efficient and as effective as possible to make sure that, again, your advertising is the same moving forward. With media spends paused, looking at, you know, SEO improvements, on-site customer experience improvements you can make to the site to, again, make sure that you are absolutely making the most of your free channels and your paid channels as we move out of this crisis. And finally, investing in your teams. You know, what can we do to make sure that the team that we have is being built for the long term to be able to hit the ground running as we move out of this phase. Then I wanted to move on to liquidity issues. So retailers all over the world have been running promotions to try and liquidate stock. It's almost been like a second coming of Cyber Weekend for the last couple of weeks. And, you know, brands are typically really well versed in being able to mark down product ranges where they do have a surplus of stock. But, you know, not that many are capable of translating that stock level information to their marketing goals. You know, if you do have one product which has an abundance of stock that you're really struggling to move, shouldn't you be trying to push that more aggressively within your marketing campaigns than the one that sells itself and stock is already dwindling down? So what we try and encourage advertisers to do at this stage is, if they can, try and push, you know, where you host that data of your stock and your availability, and push that into your product feeds to allow you to make those more intelligent bidding and business decisions across your entire marketing campaigns, and allowing you to really hopefully improve your cash flow in these tricky times. And finally, I'm going to move on to distribution issues. So increased demand, policy restricted distribution, and even the collapse of competitors is causing severe logistical issues for several brands. You know, I'm sure you're all quite familiar with these sorts of holding pages I've got here on the right. And that is, you know, definitely the case for a lot of advertisers. And there's nothing, you know, wrong with these pages. You know, these are great. You know, they do really need to restrict the flow of people onto those sites. They're doing everything right there. You know, they've got helpful information, the amount of time it takes you to get there, where you are in the queue, and also the latest message and blog specifically about COVID-19. But what they're missing out on here is, if, you know, new users coming to Farm Drop here, you know, they are going to see that it's 56 minutes to get on the site, and even then they won't be able to do anything on there. You know, what they should really be striving to do is include some sort of lead capture on these pages, and maybe with a value exchange added to it. So, you know, apologies for the inconvenience, but here's, you know, 10%. If you sign up to our mailing list, we'll make sure you're the first to know when we're back to full capacity. So, you know, these are great, and it's definitely helping in the industry, but there's more to be done to make sure that we are being as efficient as possible. So bearing in mind, like, all these issues and risks that businesses are facing, I want to move into sort of what we as marketers can be doing to sort of support and mitigate those risks. So our marketing, you know, now more than ever, really needs to be efficient. We need to be doing the basics right, and we need to be building off of that. It definitely needs to be profitable. You know, resources really limited at the minute. Anything that we do put towards marketing needs to make its money back, and that might require a bit of a change in the way that we work. And then finally, it needs to be incremental. You know, we need to make sure that this is, you know, really adding value to the business and pushing us one step further. So looking at what we can do from an efficiency standpoint, first and foremost. For first, it's, you know, strategies do need to change. The first thing I would say is that all copy needs to be reviewed. You know, we've faced probably the most rapid change in customer demand that I've ever experienced in my lifetime. You know, the first thing that happens is, you know, the change in products that people are actually buying from you is massive. You know, what you're selling now will be completely different to what you're selling a month ago. You know, Sports Direct are selling all these weights now rather than trainers. It's really important that you are reviewing all the creative and copy that you're using to make sure it is those high profile products where you do have the stock that are being displayed within the creative. And also, you know, on a similar note, in the PPC side, please do review your campaigns for, you know, your location extensions and your click and collect extensions. You know, it's one of my absolute bugbears at the minute of the PPC ads advertising click and collect when it's definitely not available for a lot of retailers anymore. So do make sure you're reviewing that as well. Again, like I say, customer demand and customer behavior is massively changed. All of a sudden, people are searching for things that they've never been searching before. They're reading publications and articles about subjects that have never really been surfaced before. It's really important that we sort of review both our blacklist and our negative keyword list to make sure that we are sort of managing where we want our ads to show, to ensure that they're not showing against anything, firstly, inappropriate, but secondly, that is really unlikely to lead to any sort of purchase or any sort of desired action moving forward. So again, really key to review those. Now we're in a very different phase. And then thirdly, you need to review your auto bidding strategies. Are they really robust enough? Consumer confidence at the minute is on a knife edge. It goes up and down with the number of deaths that happen in a 24-hour period, or what happens to be in the news over that period. Do your bid strategies actually factor that in? Are they capable of ingesting that data, or are they really underbidding on days when consumer confidence is high and overbidding in the others, and you just haven't really noticed because it all balances out? We need to make sure and maybe even revisit and look to possibly even turn more to manual bidding, where you can actually have more control over these factors. And then moving to the long term, I mentioned how pushing stock back into your product feed can be really beneficial from a goal setting perspective, but it's also really useful from an efficiency point of view. So for the likes of you running, through Google Merchant Center for shopping and various other activities, that product, if it goes out of stock, it gets removed from your feed and you stop advertising it. But there's an argument to say that you probably should have stopped advertising it a long time ago. We really shouldn't be, pushing the product that's only available in one size on it's an XXL, or in the travel base, it's a hotel with no rooms open, just one left. So we should really be, using our inventory management platforms, pushing that into the feed to allow us to make more intelligent and efficient bidding decisions within our campaigns. On a similar note, within the feeds, there's price benchmarking that we should all be trying to undertake. The sheer fact of the matter is, some products that you sell, you'll be able to do so at a cheaper rate than your competition, and vice versa. But what we should be doing is making sure that we are making the most of those comparative advantages when they do occur. There's technology out there, there's partners out there which help you sort of scan your competitor set and push the pricing that they're offering back into your feed to give you an idea of where you do have that comparative advantage and are able to make the absolute most of it. And then finally, another sort of long-term feed project is external data sources. If your performance fluctuates massively by factors that are sort of beyond your control, I've sat in Monday morning meetings where performance was good because the weather was good, or performance was bad because there was a big football match and no one was out and about doing stuff. If those things are really key drivers of your campaign performance, we need to start trying to leverage those. So you can access things like weather APIs. I've worked with shoe retailers are using that to make sure they're showing flip-flops when it's sunny in London, but wellies when it's rainy in Manchester. Looking at things like social reshares, so Twitter APIs, sports schedules, fantasy football APIs, for football player kits, etc., etc. So there's all sorts of things that might be affecting your business. It's time to start thinking about those and how we can leverage them in our campaigns to be as efficient as possible. And then marketing needs to be profitable. Our mindsets kind of need to change. I'd say 99% of the retail companies I've worked with over the years have always optimized to revenue rather than profits. And it makes sense. It's easier to do. You have your tag live on site. The revenue files through there. It's a lot easier task to complete. But again, if you are selling two products which are retail at the exact same price, but one is significantly more profitable to you, shouldn't you have different sort of efficiency goals that you hold those products to different standards? Shouldn't we be trying to be pushing more aggressively on that high margin product? So again, advertisers, where they can, should be trying their best to try and push that margin level data from where they house that again back into the feed to allow you to optimize not only to revenue but to profits, which obviously is extremely vital in times like these. And then secondly, I want to talk about sharing the risks. So we talked about at length already that continuing to spend precious resource on marketing campaigns can be really difficult for brands at the minute. And that's kind of compounded by agency fees and tech fees that potentially have to go over the top. And the typical, agency fee model is, percentage of spend or a flat fee. So what agencies are starting to look at doing, and I know Google are really heavily starting to look at doing for the last few weeks, is looking for options for agencies to be able to help and be able to share some of that risk with them. And it's not very popular, but there are, at the minute, it used to be a lot more prevalent in the market, but there are a lot of agencies out there who still do offer sort of performance-based models, even pure performance-based models, where they fund the ad spend themselves and only earn sort of a management fee, as it were, in the form of a commission on an action driven. So people should really be trying to explore those sorts of models. The idea of changing to a new agency might be really unappealing right now, but a lot of these agencies that do offer these performance models do have the ability to sync up with your affiliate networks and work with you via there, which avoids any need for long legal processes or extended contract periods. So I do encourage you, those who are worried about profitability, to explore those as well. And finally, incrementality. Standards need to change. Single blended targets need to go, and that was definitely something targeted towards performance models in the past, was that they were too rigid, and a 10% flat CPA doesn't really work anymore. You need to again adjust your goals to make sure they're driving what you want. So maybe split by generic and brand, or prospecting, retargeting, or new versus existing customers. Set the goals to be what you want to achieve. And whether you work on a performance model or not, ask your agency and your partners and your media buying teams to optimize towards a more granular goal set. And then finally, silos need breaking down. With the cookie dying out, contextual relevance of display ads and other channels becomes more important than ever. And historically, those creative and media buying teams have sat really, really far apart. Again, important now more than ever for those teams to come closer together, for creative to be at the forefront of those strategies, to make sure that our activity is actually driving engagement, not just relying on viewability metrics, but actually seeing what incremental value it's adding. And then finally, AdWords turns 20 this year, and advertisers still haven't really found a way to incorporate organic search effectively into their paid search decisions. So again, we need to change that. I think that will change over the next coming years, with advertisers beginning to look at more of a total search solution and not just each one individually. So yeah, thank you for sitting me through that. I think the key takeaways that I want people to take from this are that, I talked a lot about various feed-based activities they could undertake. And the reason for that is, the product feed is actually the lifeblood of marketing activities, particularly as we move to a more automated world. So do strive to get as much data in there as you can. I know I only really gave them some lip service without really much instruction on how to do it. The reason for that is, well, A, I'm probably, again, not the most qualified person to do that, but B, my colleague, Fred, who is most definitely qualified to do that, is actually delivering a similar webinar on it tomorrow, in our feed development framework and feed maturity framework, sorry. So please do join for that if you can. Secondly, again, where you can and you do have the resource to spare, do your best to redirect it to more long-term projects if media spend and demand is slowed. CX, analytics, SEO, and training for your team. And then finally, if the risk is becoming too much, and maybe it's not in your core market in the UK or the US, but maybe you've had to pause all international because, quite frankly, the risk is just too high there. Do explore the opportunity of working with an agency who might be willing to sort of take on some of, if not all of that risk for you, to keep you operational in those markets. And that's all I had. Thank you very much for your time.
Great, thanks, Max. So we've got a few questions, and again, just conscious of time, so I'll whiz through them. But first one, if you had to recommend one feed project for advertisers to undertake right now, what would it be?
I think it would have to be pushing sort of margin level information into your feed. Now more than ever, profitability is key. Just driving revenue, whilst very important for liquidity purposes. Being profitable is truly vital for businesses as they start to struggle. So again, trying to factor that in where you can, but ideally looking at sort of stock and availability stuff as well.
Thanks. And just in terms of those who are working with agencies or not working with agencies, but what are the typical minimum terms for agencies running activity on performance models?
Typically it can be anything from as short as a month, particularly as we move into these phases where agencies really are having to adapt and to change to be more welcoming. And this goes beyond just the performance models, but agencies really, to be supportive, are looking at other ways that they can help out businesses, and reducing their terms and minimum fees and minimum spends, etc. But for the performance model, particularly when working through those affiliate networks like I discussed, it can be pretty much just a month.
Great, thanks. And quite a few people asking, will you share your presentation afterwards?
Absolutely. I'm sure our marketing team, I'm sure, will be pushing that out to all avenues they can.
Yeah, we can definitely share that afterwards. Okay, thanks a lot, Max.
No worries. Thank you very much, Amy. Appreciate it.
No problem. Speak to you soon.
Bye.
Cool. So we are a few minutes towards the end, so just wanted to say thank you to everybody for joining and for sticking with us throughout the hour. Just an update on our next webinars. So as Max mentioned, tomorrow Fred Mordu, who is our head of product development, will be diving into best practice behind feed management. And for those of you who, if any, aren't fully optimizing your feed, or maybe you are and ready to take it a bit further, then this is definitely an inspirational session to attend. Next week, we're joined by Facebook, where Sophie, who's our wonderful partners manager, will be providing some insight on what's driving Facebook's investment in commerce. So that's going to be definitely one to watch out for. You can find more about them both and sign up at incubeta.com/events. And also, for those of you who don't know, Incubeta has introduced a new virtual learning series, and it covers a range of topics: SEO, feed management, social. The courses are there on the right, and you can visit incubeta.com to register. If you use our discount code IGNITE15, then you get 15% off. And I'm actually going to share the offer now, so you should be able to see that pop up in your sidebar. If you don't, then let us know, and we can send you all of the information. So finally, again, big thank you for everyone who attended and asked questions. We'll follow up with a recording after, and hope to see you all again very soon. Thank you, and stay safe.